Okay, since we had some problems with the testing yesterday, and it was not, obviously it was not very smoothly recorded, and there were things that I was trying to figure out during the discussion, so I thought I will put together a short video on the entire process and some of the important concepts to keep in mind. Also, my own view is that most of the logic should exist on the model rather than have so much on the controller. So, and it makes testing, as we saw yesterday, testing from the controller is not as reliable or clean, and it's much easier to test on the model. So one of the things I've been exploring was to just look at moving the code that's on the controller into a method in a class in the model. So that's the objective. So let me show what I have done. I have moved the logic from the controller. So this is the course registration controller, the create method. Okay, so we are basically adding a student to a course, registering a student in a course offering. Okay, so earlier we had pretty much most of the logic to register the student in a course. We had it in this try catch, register student in course offering, save changes to the database, reduce available openings, and then we were saying, okay, we'll generate the error if there is something, catch errors, and so on, catch exceptions, and then this part of it just goes back to if the model, so this is all of this happens only if the model state is valid, which means that there is a course offering ID and student ID. Only then would you come in and try to do the registration. If the model state isn't valid, basically you are getting returned to another view, the course registration method. So we are saying we are returning an entirely different view from, so getting back to the drop down of course offering ID and student ID to try again. Okay. Anyway, so that's in the controller, but you can see I've commented out pretty much most of the logic to try to do the add operations into course registrations, essentially registering a student in course offering and reducing available openings. I've commented it out, and instead I have put it into the course registration class. I'm going to post this code as post it as, I guess, a PDF document, a file on eCampus. Okay, that way you have access to this code as you are reviewing this video. So this is the method that I have introduced into the course registration class. Okay, and I've opened up a connection to the database, which I'm basically calling DB here. Here the method name itself is register student in course. It's going to send out an output parameter as a string, which is the error message, if there is any. If there is no error message, if there's no error, it's going to send a message which says none. And also I have a Boolean, this is a nullable Boolean, so that I can store a null value, because initially we don't know if the registration is succeeding or failing. Let me just make sure. I think it is. I just wanted to make sure that my voice is getting recorded here. Okay. So I want this this registration succeeded to either say the registration was successful or it failed, but initially it's neutral. We don't know if it succeeded or failed. So, which is why I chose to make it a nullable Boolean, so that we start with a null value rather than a true or false, because we don't want to then, if it didn't, we can't quite determine where the problem, if there was a problem or not, if I were to start off with some other initial value. Anyways, so here I have an initial error message which says none. I could also move that error message inside I would have to initialize it to something, maybe an empty string. So at this point, I guess I really don't know whether there is any error message or not, so I can just set it as an empty string. And if everything goes well inside this try block, you can see inside this try block, I basically moved the code from the controller method, which is basically the create method, create, add, or insert method. It's come into this method here inside of the class. So I'm trying to add to the registrations in the database, and then finding the course offering ID for this particular registration, so that I can reduce the available openings by 1, save the changes to the database. If all goes well, I know that the registration succeeded, and I have to indicate that there is no error message. Okay, so this is if all goes well. Now, the ways that it could fail would be, that could be, the first one would be, what type of error is that? It is where, I guess it's the number of available openings. If it falls below a particular number, then we are sending back this error message, as well as that the registration failed. And the second exception is when the student is already registered. Again, we are sending back the Boolean value of false for registration succeeded. Okay, so basically I've moved all the logic into this register student in course method. Okay. The other method, so now this method that I've created, how do I use it in the test? Okay, so the test itself, so add course registration test. We have a list of students coming from the database. Okay, this is in the list of course offerings. Again, this is coming from the test database. And then we are picking out the first course from the first course's ID, course offering ID, from the list of course offerings. And we are pulling out the third student from the list of students. And you can see last class, yesterday, we were looking at creating an object of course registrations controller. but now I no longer am going to that because I'm just going to the, instead, this is a method that's in the course registration class. So, and I created this as, so this is register student in course. This is the class that exists in the inside of the model course registration class. It's a method inside of it. So, and it's an instance method, not a class method. So you can see when I'm using it, I need to call it off of the object. So I have to create this course registration object using the course ID and student ID values that I obtained here, right? I went to the database, got the student ID, course ID, and now I'm creating this course registration object, and I'm saying I'm going to use the register student in course method. Okay. Now it's going to give me a Boolean value along with the message. Okay. So if all goes well, the expected course registration should be true. The actual course registration is, of course, the value, the Boolean value that gets returned. And the actual message is an output parameter value that I'm receiving into this variable that I set up here in the test method. So this test method is, what did we call it? Add course registration test. Okay. Now, so again, I'm not going to the view result. These things are not very, you could see it was not easy to set up, and there are many other places where the code could break or the logic could fail, and it's not a very robust test. Because of that, our entire purpose of testing is to focus on where the logic could fail and not have other places potentially in some controller code which is written, and then we have to look inside the view bag and so on, which is not very robust. So for example, last class we were having to look inside sorry about that. We had to look inside the view bag. I guess I deleted the part about where we were getting the data from the view bag, so I don't have that anymore. So anyway, so get back to test. Okay, right here. So what I'm asserting is that I'm getting a true for the expected course registration to tally with the actual, and the actual message there is going to be expected to be none. Obviously, if there is an error, I want to say something expected error should be none, register student failed. Okay, so this is as far as just testing the registration of the student in a course. Now, as we discussed last time, if we just insert a student we register a student in a course offering, which on the database side ends up being a student getting inserted into course registration. So if a student was inserted into this course registration, then if we try to insert the same student again into the same course offering, well, it's going to fail. So then we saw that last time we had to roll everything back roll it forward, which obviously is very painful. So instead, what we said we need to do is each time on the test database, each time we make a change, we have to sort of reverse it back to its original state. And so that's what we are trying to do here by dropping the student from the course. And this is the point where at the very end I was having a problem, and Stella pointed out that I was calling the wrong controller method. Now we are totally eliminating using a method from the controller, but what she pointed out was if we had actually used a method from the controller, it should have been, I was trying to call the delete method. It's delete, okay. And there are two delete methods, delete and delete confirmed. So what she pointed out was the method where this is actually implemented, the drop is actually implemented, is the delete confirm method, where the actual removal happens. But obviously I was calling the wrong method, the delete method, which didn't quite do that. And that's why in our test yesterday, when I was calling the delete method, it didn't delete it. So basically when I tried to run it a second time, it would fail because it didn't drop the student from the course offering. But now what I have done is, just like with creating a method, register student in course on the inside the model, inside the class, in the same course controller, the course registration class, I've created a method called drop student from course. And so this essentially does whatever we had previously in the delete confirmed method in the controller. So in the controller, delete confirmed had all of this, where it removes the course registration object, saves this to the database, finds the course offering object, and this actually, the logic here is incorrect. It shouldn't be reduce the number of available openings. It should actually add to it, because if you think about it, each time if a student were to drop a course, the number of available openings increases rather than decreases. So all of this I've commented out, and then after I'm basically redirecting, after I delete, I'm redirecting to the index. You can see that it's going to the index, the action name, and we said that the index is really no longer accessible by the student because we had, this is having a lot of code, I didn't delete it, so I've put the index right here, which is really something that is, we said, should be accessed only by the instructor or an advisor, because it gives course registrations for all students. Instead, we created, if you remember, another method only for the registrations of that particular student. So instead of redirecting after a student is either registered or he or she drops a course, what I want to do is I want to redirect to that course registration. So you can see over here, if the course registration succeeds, I redirect to student registrations. Similarly, if a student is going to drop a course, you can find it here, delete confirmed. If the drop succeeds, I can do some kind of action. So this is going to be called a student registrations. I'll revisit this controller method again, but basically I want to show you that I took it out of the controller, put this drop student from course into a method in the course registration class, and again I do the strike catch. So I try to remove, increase the available openings, and set student drop to true. If for some reason the drop operation fails, then it doesn't do it, move it to the database, then it's false, the student is not dropped, and returns that value, a true or false value back. And this helps us again in our testing to see if this drop action succeeded or not. So if you look at my test now, similar to adding a student, I also have a delete test. Right, each time I can see, I can get back the true or false value and see if it succeeded or not. Okay, and then we had said, this was based off of Mike's suggestion, we said we just went to the database, got the course registration from the database for that particular student and course offering, and we used that to then drop the student from the course. Okay, so this is with all of the data from the database to then reconstitute that particular course registration which is in the database to get rid of it. Okay, so only then would our tests constantly run. Okay, let me show this to you. So if I just run all my tests, it's not sufficient that it only runs the first time. It should run each and every time. Only then would it be a valid test. Since I obviously made some code changes, it's taking some time to build before it runs the test. Okay, so it ran it all. I'll run it again. You'll have to, however many times you run it, so just keep running it at least 3-4 times so that you know that if there is no side effect of something else failing. So this is very, very important to keep in mind, that you don't want your test to just run once, but multiple times. So just if you should, and so similarly, if any change occurs on the database, if there's a delete, you have to complement it with an insert, and then similarly for edits. Okay, so this is the test, so the calling of the method in the test. Now in the controller, obviously again I've commented out a lot of the logic. I need to just call the method rather than have all of the logic in the method. Okay, so you can see a huge amount of the code is commented out, and that actually makes it much more readable on the controller side. So what I'm doing here is basically we have a course registration method, course registration object in the create method of course registration control. So this create method has a course registration object as a parameter. Okay. So this is obviously corresponding to whatever is in the view that's being brought into this method. So we are basically saying that whatever values are being passed in through the view, and remember this, we've already tested it in the test project. Now we are using an entirely different way of using the method in our model. Okay. So this is the method in a model, register student in course, which is going to provide us an error message as an output, as well as whether the registration succeeded or not. I'm getting the registration date inside the method in the model now. Okay, and then all that I check for in the controller are is if the registration succeeded or not. If it succeeded, then I redirect to student registrations, which just displays this particular student's registrations. Else, I redirect them to the error message view. Okay. And then all of the logic that gets sent into the model class method is commented out. And if this was, as I said earlier, if this is it's called if the model, so you have if model state is valid. So if model state is valid, all this happens. And this ends right here. So this if model state is valid. So if model state was invalid, if model was invalid, that is, if student ID or course offering ID was not shown, then you just see this view without, so it's going to be a drop-down list without any, it's not going to obviously provide any of this register or whatever was already registered, okay, because the registration failed. So now if I were to run it, there is one thing to note though. If I were to run it, this would fail with the student name. If you remember, student name, which is no longer there in our model and the database, we changed this to, I think we called it user full name. If you look at the identity model, we moved it to the parent class and we called it user full name. So I'm going to change this to user full name. So this is where I'm selecting for the drop-down list. There is no such thing in student as student name, and that's true of the delete confirmed as well. So let me just find delete confirmed. Well, redirect action, student registrations. So wherever you see, you could do, I think there is the edit operation. I think there is okay, let's see. I don't want to change the wrong thing, so let's see if I can just find this. Delete course registrations. I'm just trying to see if there is any other place, and you should do this as well. So any place that has student name or instructor name, you'll have to change it to user full name ID equals select list right here. Which method is this that I want? Okay, this is for edit. So for edit as well, if you try to display the student's name, it's not there. This is user full name with U and F and N uppercase. Okay. So now if I were to run this, I'll log in as student number 3 was Kobe Bryant, so I will log in as Kobe Bryant, and let's see if we can. So essentially, now instead of the code being in the controller, the code is being called, the logic is being called by the controller and then communicated to the view. So I'll go to course registration, student registrations. I've already logged in as Kobe Bryant. So this is, I'm already unfortunately registered, so I will just delete this. Okay, so it's coming back and saying that this is the area that I want you to be aware of. There is no such attribute definition for student name. This is in the delete method inside course registration. So I'll go into course registrations controller, go to the delete method, probably delete confirm this is. Let's see, delete. So delete first and see if delete method. Okay. And then let's see if delete confirm also. Okay, so if I don't find it in the controller, the next place I have to check is the view. So I'll go into my view folder, go to course registrations, delete. Okay, so course registrations folder under views, go to delete. You can see it right here. I have student name not being recognized, so I'm going to change it to user full name. IntelliSense should pick it up. As soon as I use dot, user full name. Okay. So let's see, I don't think there's any other. Okay, so that should take care of it. Let me go back since it was on the view. I saved it. Let me try refreshing and see if it works. Okay, so this is the confirmation. Let's say yes. Okay, so I'm back at student registrations. I'll create a new registration. Okay, so Kobe Bryant is student number for the third student, course offering ID 1. I registered. So the same method is now being used to register a student through the controller, but this time it is going to the to my development database, not my test. So even though there is a student, if I go back to my test, if I run this, even though Kobe Bryant has registered for that first course offering ID 1, it doesn't prevent me from registering in the test database. So this should keep running and passing regardless of whatever data changes occur on the development database. Anyways, I will hopefully you understand this. Also, please be aware that this server has had some problems, so hopefully it seems to have the server in my office on which I maintain the student databases, the projects databases. One of the BEIT administrators said it had automatically turned off, potentially because it could be overheating. I will be traveling for my daughter's soccer, basically starting Friday evening. I'll be returning only Sunday night. So if something happens to the server, I won't be able to fix it until Monday. I've requested Charles and Mike to see if they can help if there are problems. But in case it's not accessible, that will be the reason. If it does go down, please try to set up your databases both for development and for testing, especially for your project on the Azure server. Again, I would on Monday I want to see these tests. Take one of your classes, the one where you feel there is most functionality, like for student registration. The student registering in a course offering has the most logic. So take whichever class has the most substantial logic, and in that try to set this up. Of course, if you want to experiment and make sure it is going well, you could take a simpler class first and then see if you can extend it to a more challenging class, doing essentially these add, deletes, edits, and so on. Okay. So hopefully this clarifies. I will post the code on eCampus as well.